Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of AI for Growth. This time we're focusing on the manufacturing industry with a little accent on the textile industry. We have 5 interesting presentations for you today. The first one will be brought by Transition, who will be talking about the trends and evolutions of AI in the manufacturing industry. After that, we'll have a presentation by Delaware, who will be discussing their application in smart image tagging through the tagging factory. After that, Ordina will give us their presentation on the bill of materials matchmakers, again in the textile industry. After these 2 industry cases, we have 2 academic presenters who will be presenting some of their assets that have been building up in the academic world for use in the manufacturing industry. The first of these is by the IPI research unit, talking about vision in the loop, or real-time monitoring and control in additive manufacturing. And finally, we will have somebody from the Sumo Research Lab who will be talking about data-efficient machine learning for engineering design. And now, without any further ado, let me introduce Vincent Dafour from Transition. Vincent, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for introducing me. Also, thank you, AI for Growth, for having me. To give you a short intro, who am I? I'm Vincent. I'm CEO and co-founder of Transition. Transition is a startup. We're a 1-year-old startup. We're based in Ghent. And Transition basically stands for Trends in Transitie. We're an AI-driven and B2B data analytics company. And what we do is we focus on monitoring, analyzing, and predicting trends. Which kind of trends? All trends that impact companies. So you can think of ourselves as a personal virtual assistant that can answer questions like which trends are impacting your company, which trends are impacting your customers, how hard are these trends impacting you, how and when should you respond, and so on. So with this, we really try to help organizations become future-proof in this fast-changing, unpredictable world. And we do that in a data-driven way. So we use open big data. We have our own proprietary trend analytics algorithms, and we use AI to be able to monitor trends impacting a certain environment. And these environments can be sectors, so they will not linked to any sector. We can show what's going on in any sector, whether it's manufacturing, banking, retail. And the cool thing is that we can spot spillover effects. So things that are happening, for instance, in retail might be interesting for banking, might be interesting for manufacturing. And that's because we're data-driven. We can really tailor these insights and also look what's going on in other sectors. So we've basically productized our algorithms. We've automated trend watching. We're building technology that can continuously monitor the future of companies. A couple of added value features are that we can indeed continuously do trend monitoring, that you can build your own tailored reports, that we can create an actionable warning system where we proactively warn you when things start to change in your environment, that we can really profoundly show you a lot of trend insights. We can show you trend news, trend cases, and have a couple of collaboration features built in. So for this session, what we've done is we've looked at manufacturing, we've looked at a couple of most impactful trends within manufacturing, and we've selected 40 of them. And the 40 trends we've built into a mini report. I'm going to show you after this slide. And what's interesting is that we've looked at a couple of megatrends. So big trend themes that don't tend to evolve that fast. We're going to look at one megatrend, basically digital transformation and the impact on manufacturing operations processes. We're going to look at technology trends which are used in this digital transformation. And then we're going to zoom in on one technology trend, mainly AI, and look at what's going on there from a trend perspective. So let me now just move you to the reports. So this is the report that we usually build. What you see here is a trend radar. So 40 trends clustered together. And what you see is from a high impact perspective, so AI, all the way down to a low impact for the printing on a specific context, in this case, manufacturing. And we can really show different dynamics. For instance, There's also the manufacturing textile industry in the report. If I would zoom in on that, you see that the dynamics of how these trends impact that context are different. So let me just go back to manufacturing and then zoom in on the megatrends that are in this report. So we've selected 6 because we saw a lot of trend strengths in these sectors. So if you look at it within manufacturing, number one trend from a megatrend perspective is sustainability, followed closely by digitalization and digital transformation, or personalization and customization. So that really is a consumer behavior change towards more personalized products, personalized services. Um, Urbanization, so the rise of cities, globalization, and resource depletion. Now, what's interesting is if you, for instance, take another view on this, not showing you the impact on the sector, but how fast these trends are changing, there is one that's basically changing rather fast, and that's digitization and digital transformation. So let me just click on that one to give you an example of the things that we can show on a trend level. So first things, what we do is we quantify it. So we look into the past, 7 years into the past, and we visualize how these trends evolve through time. And we do that with a certain focus on the sector. So what you see here is the impact on the manufacturing sector, and we basically compare it to anything, but in this case, it's compared to all industries combined. So that's the green one. The blue one is the impact on the manufacturing sector, and the grayed out zones is a fault tolerance that is built into our models. So as you can see here, indeed, digital transformation has really picked up within this industry, also within all industries, the last couple of years. And our models forecast that this growth will linearly evolve a little bit through time. So this is like the chart evolution that we can show. A next thing is that we can show an actionable suggestion. So what should you do as a company with this trend? In this case, it's Celsius to incorporate this trend. That means really scale digital transformation within the organization. We also derive a couple of KPIs or metrics based on this. For instance, we predict on a time horizon perspective when these trends will hit you the most. So in this case, 0 to 2 years, which means that you should indeed be doing something with this trend. And we can show you a couple of other KPIs like the trend strength, the average trend strength of the last 24 months, monthly rate of change for the last 2 years, monthly rate of change for the last 7 years. So the 2 years is really interesting to spot whenever trends start to picking up speed and accelerating really fast. So this is like the quantifiable high-level view on what we can do on a trend level. And then we can source a lot of metadata behind these trends evolutions. For instance, what other trends do we find a lot of signals for digital transformation? Cloud computing, cybersecurity, remote workforce is probably due to COVID that we see the signal appearing, and a couple of others. We can also zoom in on where do we see which industries are most impacted by this trend. In this case, it's retail banking, telecom, also VC, which means VC is basically investing in these kind of technologies, and a couple of others. Now, because we use open big data, so we basically monitor the internet, we can also show the stories behind the data, basically. And we can really tailor these feeds based on whatever preferences you might have. So this is how we look at trends from a quantifiable and AI-driven approach. So as you can see, digital transformation, fast growth, high impact on the manufacturing sector. Now, let me zoom in on purely some operational manufacturing activities from a trend perspective. So which trends are impacted by digital transformation on an operational level? And then you can see that, for instance, of course, innovation is a big one, but also process automation shows high strengths within the sector, followed closely by quality control, predictive maintenance, anomaly detection, quality assurance, and so on and so on. Now, again, the cool thing is if you would look at it from a changing perspective, that there are a couple of these trends that tend to be changing rather fast within manufacturing. Predictive maintenance, demand forecasting, and let me zoom in on process automation because I know there's a case coming on intelligent automation. So what you see here on process automation is that the trend is indeed also picking up speed, but more in a linear way. So not as exponential as we saw for digital transformation, but our models predict that this trend will evolve rather linearly into the future. That's why we see that most companies are indeed looking into process automation already, or are starting to look into prototyping these kind of solutions. So I don't have the time to zoom in on all of them, but of course, this report will be made available to the ones who are interested afterwards. So if we now look into, we have digital transformation having an effect on operational manufacturing processes. Which technologies are mostly used in these transformations? Then you clearly see that AI is like the top trend that has an impact on these operational activities, followed by robotics, IoT, cloud computing, 3D printing, blockchain, autonomous vehicles, and so on. So these were selected by us because we saw there was a high impact on these sectors. Again, if I would look at the change of speed of change, then you see that there are two really kicking out. It's AI and distributed ledger. And for the sake of it, let's zoom in on the AI trend. And again, what we will see for this trend, that it has grown rather fast the last couple of years. And since 2017, our signals are at the top level. So that means that how we normalize these models, that it really keeps trending on the last couple of years within manufacturing. If you look at related trends, it's deep learning, NLP, autonomous vehicles, chatbots, algorithms as a service, a really interesting one, intelligent virtual assistants, and so on. So again, a trend that sees high traction, high trend strength within the manufacturing sector. So now let's zoom in on within AI. Of course, there are like a couple of sub-trends that are going on. So what we've done is we've looked at a couple of specific AI trends and a couple of technologies that use AI to be able to transform these processes. And as you can see, again, from an impact, you see that machine learning is mostly trending, followed closely by computer vision. And I think we have a couple of cases that have to do with these trends. Also NLP, robotic process automation, intelligent virtual assistants, intelligent automation are really trends that are having an impact. And when I apply the same approach, so let's look at change now. There's something peculiar, because what you see here is that we see three trends. That's artificial emotional intelligence, ethical AI, and trust in AI. And when you look at it from a trend strength perspective, these are like the ones at the bottom line here. But if you look at it from a change perspective, they're not having that much impact today on the sector, but they're really accelerating fast. For instance, if I would zoom in on this one, explainable AI, we would see a growth going on here. So basically a trend that didn't exist before, and since 2016, 2017, it's really accelerating. And that's due to because whenever we apply more AI in companies, we need next level AI, like explainable AI, trust in AI, emotional AI. That are the next gen trends when it comes to AI. And let me zoom in on one more just to round it up. Let's look at intelligent automation, again, because there is a case coming on intelligent automation. It's also a trend that is growing fast in the sector. It's also from basically nowhere in 2012, 2013 to already some strength, and it's growing kind of linearly. So really interesting to see that we have some cases now within this session and where we can spot the trends that this is really having an impact on the manufacturing sector. So thank you for having me, and I wish you all a nice session.
Hi, Vincent. Thank you for that wonderful overview. I'm happy to see that artificial intelligence has been trending in the manufacturing industry. It seems we're coming at the right time then. Lovely interface to the tool as well. And I especially liked the fact that you were able to show the difference between trends that are currently small but are picking up in velocity. So the 2-year, 7-year difference, or the green colors for the people with more visual memory. So that's a nice addition to the tool, I find. I have a small question. How do you make the distinction between buzzword trends and trends that are already being translated in revenue impact or things like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's basically the added value of applying AI, natural language processing, onto huge volumes of worldwide data. Because we as persons are usually biased whenever we see things appearing in the news or in the media, and we start to reflect like, okay, this is really impacting us as a company. But in reality, what's happening is that you're in your information bubble and you see a couple of signals appearing where you think, okay, this is huge. But with AI, with big data, what you see is these signals tend to average out on a global scale. So these buzzwords apply the right natural language processing methodologies to it, you can really see that these are things that are buzzing in a certain region or a certain sector, but that they're not being growing or impacting an industry or more industries in the field. And what we basically do is with NLP, we look at this innovation view. So whenever we start to see or start or VC capital, whenever we start to see new products, new services in the market, whenever we start to see business models appearing that are using this technology, that triggers our signals to saying, okay, this is not a hype anymore. There's actually a business behind it, and it's really augmenting within a certain sector. And that's basically how we look at it. So not only at the signals, but going a little bit further and really looking at it from a business innovation perspective.
Okay, it's a very convincing answer. I'm happy to hear you say that. One more follow-up question, because you've been digging deeper. We've been looking at the data, so to say. Of course, a lot of times when you're doing and building an AI application or any type of application these days, you have to have the right data. Now, especially in your case, when you're building a tool to basically sift through, well, inhuman amounts of data, how do you do quality testing? How are you sure that whatever comes out corresponds to something? Because it's not like you can make the same report by hand and use that as a ground truth. So how have you addressed this problem?
Well, since the beginning, we know we don't want garbage in our data because that will affect our algorithms and garbage in, garbage out a bit. So what we basically do is we don't buy data sources. We're not against it, but we've tried it and we see that the quality of these labeled data sources isn't what we want it to be. So what we do is, and we spend a lot of time and effort in it, is that we scan our own data sources. We do our own quality checks in terms of, is it fake news? Is it copyable news? What's the quality of this news source? And then we do our own labeling of these data sources. So we know that the data sets that we're working on is really the quality level that we want it to be, because otherwise we can't stand behind our predictions if we know that the data that we put in isn't just the level of quality that we need. So that's a little bit different than other companies who buy huge amounts of data, but they use that. We don't do that. We tend to really curate our data sources on our own and know that the level of quality is top. So that's how we do it. Yeah.
Okay, I think we should end this here. But thank you for your overview. Bye.
Indeed. Bye.